It's the SNL Hall of Fame podcast with your host, Jamie Dew, Chief Librarian Thomas Senna, and featuring Matt Ardill. And now, curator of the hall, Jamie Dew.
All right, thank you so much, Doug Danance. It's JD here, and we are back for season 4 of the SNL Hall of Fame, and I am glad you are here with us. We have a gangbusters show for you today, a peek behind the curtain, you might say. The SNL Hall of Fame podcast is a weekly affair. Each episode, we take a deep dive into the career of a former cast member, host, musical guest, or writer, and add them to the ballot for your consideration. Once the nominees have been announced, we turn to you, the listener, to vote for the most deserving and help determine who will be enshrined for perpetuity inside the hall. That's right. That's what we do here. If you're looking for long-form interviews with super fans of SNL, talking about great icons of SNL, you have come to the right place, my friends. So I'm glad you're here. The number one question that we get asked is, how do we come up with the nominees? Why didn't we do all of the 70s nominees at once? Why didn't we do all of the 80s nominees at once? And the truth is, we started this project very late from a Hall of Fame perspective. If this were a legitimate Hall of Fame, ooh, that pains me to say. If this were a Hall of Fame that were officially recognized by SNL, it would have started probably around 82 or 83, and they would have been inducting people annually, and it would have been smaller lists and things like that would have occurred. What we are doing here is we are producing a podcast. And so we try to curate a list of nominees that span the eras and span the genres of the show so that we can highlight a great swath of what makes this nearly 50-year institution so great. And that's what we're going to do this week. This is the season 4 draft. We have Matt Ardill, we have Thomas Senna, and we have Jon Schnieder from the Saturday Night Network joining us this week. And what they are going to do is they are going to do a draft. There will be 5 rounds of the draft. And basically the way it breaks down is each person must select at least one musical guest writer. They must pick one previous a nominee from season 1, and the remainder they can use however they wish. So they could have 2 musical guests and 3 hosts or 3 cast members. They can do it however they wish to break down, as long as they survive those parameters. So why don't I stop yakking and tell you to wipe your feet and invite you inside for this, the season 4 draft. Stick around after the show because I have a big announcement to make about the draft, but I don't want to interrupt it off the top. We're going to listen to it, we're going to enjoy it, and we're going to go from there. So let's do it. Let's head down to the draft room. All right, welcome to the SNL Hall of Fame inaugural candidate draft. I'm really excited about this idea, and I think this is going to go a long way in helping our audience better understand exactly the process that we use to select the nominees. It has been debated and argued on Reddit and Facebook that, it should be chronological. However, we didn't start this in 1985 or 1983. We started it in 2020 or 2021, I guess it was. So as a result, we tend to program the candidates, and we try to pick a good section of candidates that run the gamut of eras, so that our audience has an interesting place to listen from. And today we've got 3 special guests that are going to be selecting in this inaugural candidate draft. We have to my left, Mr. Jon Schnieder of the Saturday Night Network. How are you doing, John?
I'm doing great, Jamie. 4 seasons in, my feet have never been cleaner, so I am ready to go tonight.
Excellent. Excellent. We're also joined by our friend Matt Ardill. Matt, how's it going?
Hey, great. I brought brand new shoes just for tonight, too, so I'm being mindful of the space.
Submit that receipt so you can get that money back. And of course, our friend Thomas Senna. Thomas, how's it going?
What's up, Jamie? How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm really great. A little warm, but other than that,
it dawned on me today that Matt and I, John's going to essentially be assigning homework to me and Matt, and we'll be assigning homework to each other since Matt does the great job with the trivia stuff at the top of the show, and then I'll lead the conversations and whatnot. So this is kind of like finding out our homework assignments, or opening a gift, I guess, if you will, opening 15 gifts.
We're creating the syllabus.
Yes.
Yes. So you can use this as a jumping off point. This is the first time we've really, I guess at the beginning of season 2, we announced who we were nominating as well. But this is the first time you get to look behind the scenes and see how this stuff occurs. So there will be discussion, there will be debate, there will be some, oh no's, I wanted to pick him or her. I
do want to point out, Jamie, that this is a rare draft in which if somebody takes your pick, that's actually a pretty good thing. Like, I would be stoked if Matt or John took somebody who was like high on my board that I was definitely going to pick. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting take. Okay. Well, what are your expectations going into this? Does anybody have any trepidations or expectations?
I'm just excited to hear everybody's choice. I think it's going to be fun to hear the reasoning that people have. Like, this is why I think they should be in the Hall of Fame.
Excellent.
I think for me, the first 3 seasons have definitely created a backlog at the Hall of Fame. And I think that now I would say that there may be a few nominees tonight that you may consider on the edge of like great cast members to perhaps Pantheon, but I think we're like finally out of the point where we're hitting on people that are all-time legends of the show, and now we're just getting for the very good, if not greats, of SNL history. And when you get to those types of people to nominate, it creates a lot of debate. So I feel like the people we're nominating today will create even better episodes for all of you this season.
Yeah, kind of to echo what John said. To me, it's not so much about if this person is going to be in the Hall of Fame or is like a lock for the Hall of Fame or whatever. It's what could make a good episode. And to me, like, we're doing a podcast here, and I'm leading most of these conversations, if not all of them. And to me, I'm thinking, like, is this person somebody who I want to spend an hour talking about? And there will be picks who some people might say, oh, that person's not a Hall of Famer. But, is it an interesting discussion is more so where I'm going toward. And get me wrong, there's people on my list who I think should be slam dunks in the Hall of Fame, but that's not like the end all be all of my thought process with this.
Great. Well, without further ado then, let's begin. John, you're on the clock.
All right, very exciting. So many options, so many possibilities, but I think I landed on, since I knew that I had the first pick coming into this, someone who I felt had to get on to the ballot for this particular season, and I wanted to make sure, because of the way and restrictions that of all the people that I picked today, I wanted to make sure that I got this person and not necessarily Matt or Thomas, because I'm in love with this particular former cast member who came onto the show at a time that I felt like she crushed it. So many characters, so many impressions, and really made her mark as we were starting to go from one era to another. And that person is Anna Gasteyer, somebody who I feel has to be nominated for the Hall of Fame. When she comes on, she has so much chemistry with other cast members, including Will Ferrell, who with Bobby Mohan Culp, when they did the Culps together, was so great. How about her impressions? You know, you can't forget Martha Stewart. We see it every single year at Thanksgiving. There's just so many moments for Anna on the show, and you're going to get to listen to an episode of hers where somebody is going to make the case of why she gets in the Hall of Fame. And today I am only picking people who I think have a good shot to get there.
Interesting. I like the strategy. Anna Gasteyer as your first pick. I think that's a real solid pick. And I look forward to hearing that episode for sure and learning a little bit more about her. Any other comments?
Well, Thomas, Matt, did you guys have her on your board?
Yeah, so she was on my board. I wasn't definitely going to pick her, but she was definitely high up there as far as consideration. And I think it's going to be a really great episode. I'm looking forward to having that discussion about Anna Gasteyer, just a true gem from a really strong era. So I think that's a wonderful pick. Like, I'm excited. Like, this is, I got to open a present just now, and it was Anna Gasteyer. So thank you, John. I'm looking forward to this.
I didn't have her on my list, but mainly because I'm trying to avoid just picking people from like my period of Saturday Night Live, because that's my high school years right there. I love her. She's an amazing performer. And I am really looking forward to the episode because that's just perfect choice. Perfect choice.
And I'll just say, as we wrap up the discussion on Anna, the other major factor why I wanted to pick her today was because of American Auto. And I really feel like if you're going to pick somebody who's still in the zeitgeist, that would help boost her potentially getting into the Hall of Fame. So that's where I felt like it would be a good decision to start with her.
Yeah, it's always interesting when, I mean, there were a couple episodes last season where Thomas and I discussed, should we move this episode to this spot because something's going on in the zeitgeist? And in a couple cases, we did make a few little switches. In another case, we just couldn't put it together, and maybe that person will be listed today. I'm very curious if that person is listed today. But yeah, I think a great pick. All right, we'll move over to Matt.
All right. Well, my number one, I started with a writer because the writers are the unsung heroes of the show. I chose Sarah Schneider, hilarious talent from 2011 to 2017. She was co-head writer in the 42nd season. In 2016, she had a new show come out that is also hilarious with former SNL alumni co-head writer Chris Kelly, called The Other Two. So she's still out there. The new season of that just dropped, but she's consistently working with SNL colleagues. Like Molly Shannon is in The Other Two, funny as hell. And she's shown that she's flexible in creating sketches from like Do It in My Twin Bed to the 2015 Democrat debate sketch. So she can do like from the silly side to the political side. And I love the material that she helped bring to the screen.
I'm not familiar with her, but I know those two sketches you just mentioned, so I guess I am familiar with her after all. Are there any other sketches that you can think of around the table?
Oh, sorry, you're asking just us too?
Yeah, just around the table. Yeah.
Well, can I just ask for the first part? Are we nominating Sarah Schneider and Chris Kelly together? Because I feel like with other notable duos in terms of writers, they were definitely paired together. And in this case, it's hard to find sketches that Sarah Schneider wrote without Chris Kelly or vice versa.
That's a good point. I mean, we want because they were co-head writers. They did collaborate a lot. They weren't a team per se, like some of the more well-known teams, but they did collaborate a lot. So should we pair them like we have with some of the other writers? Would that make sense? My feeling, and I'll throw this to the group, but my feeling is that we should ideally get away from groups. It seems to be some sort of liability. I mean, we had to wait for a long time to see the Lonely Island get in, and Franken and Davis are still, cusping it.
So
okay, well, let me just
sure.
present you the other side, Jamie, because
Sure.
I'm just looking through some of our stuff at the Saturday Night Network, some of the writing credits over the years, and I see about 110 sketches that I have Sarah Schneider listed on, and I'd say 90% of them are with Chris Kelly.
Oh, wow. Well, then, I mean, that makes a very strong argument.
Yeah.
And in that case, then I nominate the pair because that's an even stronger combination in my mind. I mean, we can also add in the stepchild sketch to the list of really amazing sketches. That weird well play set in the backyard where kids could just mope at a well is a part of that.
They did Totino's together also, all those that trio of Totino sketches.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're a great combination. And if I get to combine them, more's the better because I love them both.
Great. Well, did anybody else have them on their board? On their draft board?
I did not. I'm looking forward to doing more research on Sarah Schneider and Chris Kelly and their work. So this is one, Matt, that going in, I'm probably aware of most, if not all, of the sketches that they're behind. I just don't know that it was them who wrote them. So I'm looking forward to digging in and doing this episode.
Awesome. I can't wait to hear it. Well, Thomas, pass the baton to you. Your first pick.
Alrighty. So I'm just going to get this one out of the way. I don't think this is going to surprise, especially John, much because he knows how much I love this person. And I think at first glance, this person, people might kind of wonder, is this person an SNL Hall of Famer or not? But if you really dig into their work, and we've referenced already like at least 3-4 sketches just on our discussion right now that this person's been in, I think they got lost in the shuffle a little bit, but not because they weren't great on the show. It's just because maybe some of the other cast members maybe got a little more attention for one reason or another. So I'm gonna pick Vanessa Bayer as my first pick, and I already have a guest lined up for that. I've already been doing some wheeling and dealing behind the scenes, so
Excellent.
I have a guest lined up for Vanessa Bayer. I think it's going to be a really good episode. We had mentioned the Totino's trio of sketches that she was in. She has recurring characters that were memorable. Anytime she was in a sketch, she just really elevated it and brightened it up. So I'm so excited. I'm maybe in our little SNL community, I might be the biggest Vanessa Bayer fan. So this one's kind of personal to me. But so Vanessa Bayer, there you go.
That smile, it's infectious, and it actually comes through the television. I don't know how she does it. She's fantastic. Great pick. Did anybody else have Vanessa Bayer on their board?
I knew that Thomas was going to pick Vanessa, so I didn't. I would say that. But Vanessa is a really interesting case study where I'm so fascinated to see how people view her, because she just comes into SNL right as the Kristen Wiig domination is starting to wrap up. And then we have like a couple years there where Vanessa is really starting to like lead this new group of women on the show before we have the takeover of Kate and Cecily and 80. So it's like... Right. It's almost like this like forgotten era a little bit where, you had like Taron Killam, Jay Farrow, Vanessa Bayer like running the show a little bit. And it seems like people just, transported it from like one era to the next without remembering those 2 or 3 years. So I'm excited to hear what you're going to say, Thomas, in that episode, and your guest as well, as far as the case to be made for Vanessa.
I know she was on my list for the same reasons. She's just, there's energy to any appearance that she does that is infectious, and you want to watch her. You want to watch what she does and how she does it, because it's always a joy. Like the sketch that she would do, generally it was like towards the end of the show with Cecily, where they were the porn stars and just mispronouncing everything. And it was just always so bonkers. I was like, how far are they going to take it? And they always took it just to the point of the extreme of funny, and any further would have been too far, they knew where exactly to bring it to. And I just love that range that she has. So I can't wait to hear this.
Yeah, I think when people listen to the Vanessa Bayer episode, we're going to bring up sketches and characters that she did, and people will be like, oh yeah, that's right, she did that. Oh yeah, I forgot about that one. So I think it's going to be one of those episodes where people kind of start remembering how much she actually did contribute to the show.
Are you going to tip your hand at your guest, or are you going to keep that a secret?
I think he's still going to do it. I got Sammy K. I poached from John a little bit. So Sammy
great.
K, he's another huge
Sammy
Bear fan. so Sammy and I will just be fanboying over Vanessa Bear for an episode.
It's just Elise, eh, John?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, signed.
All right. Pick number 2. We go back to John. At this point, just to recap, we have on a guest star, we have Sarah Schneider and Chris Kelly, and we have Vanessa Bayer. So Matt has met one of his criteria at this point with having chosen a writer or a musical guest. In this case, he chose a writer. You each have 4 picks left, and John, you're on the clock.
Absolutely. Well, I feel that when it comes to the nominees that have already taken place over the last few seasons, we've gone back to some of the greatest eras in the history of the show and taken all the really notable top-of-the-line cast members from each of those eras. Except there is one that I feel like is a little bit of a derivative of previous cast members that maybe had been overshined by some all-time greats, but truly, if you go back and watch his sketches, you'll see that he is kind of like the glue of that particular era. And that's Jason Sudeikis. I think that he is just incredible, really an all-time great that, if he's in a cast with Bill Hader and Kristen Wiig, and obviously, Andy Samberg has his own niche on the show as well. So you have like these other people that are taking away the shine from him, but he stabilizes so many sketches. Kenan Thompson talks a lot about how great it was to always put Jason in his sketches because he made them so much better. And just the way that he could yell on command, he is I talked about derivative. I see like the Dan Aykroyd in him. I see the Phil Hartman in him, 2 SNL Hall of Famers. To me, he is like their baby in a way, and I think he's so fantastic. Obviously, Ted Lasso just wrapping up as well, so he's still in the zeitgeist. To me, this is going to be a fantastic episode, the Jason Sudeikis one.
I mean, no doubt about it. I feel like that one's a slam dunk. There's going to be a lot of people all over that one for sure.
He was my number 3. Yeah. Just speak to the glue. Like, there's the J-Pop America Fun Time Now, where he's playing the teacher. And because that's Vanessa at most extreme with Karen. And you got Jason just like, oh my God, as like this grounding element in the show, in the sketch. Like you got that, you got him as Vance in the What's Up With That, which basically is Ted Lasso in his dancing form. Yeah, he's what I love in a good sketch troupe is the workhorse, the player who can be anything you need whenever you need him. And that is Jason. I love that. So, woohoo, can't wait for that one.
If Matt or John didn't pick Jason Sudeikis, I was going to 100%. I wasn't going to go through this draft process without choosing Jason Sudeikis and making sure he was on the season 4 lineup. And he's probably going to be one of our headliners, if not the headliner, for season 4 of the SNL Hall of Fame. So I wasn't going to go all 15 picks without seeing Jason Sudeikis selected. So thank you, John. You opened up another slot for me. You took somebody who I was going to take for sure. So see, Jamie, that's what I mean. Like John took one of my picks, but that makes me happy because that opens up a pick for me. But, Jason Sudeikis is just a no-brainer, going to be a great episode. We're all fans of Sudeikis, so that's just awesome. I'm so excited to do this episode.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. All right, Matt.
All right. Well, this is another one of my required fields. It's my pulling them from the brink from season 1. I've gone to bat for him in 2 roundtables. I've gone to bat for him in season 1. I am choosing Michael O'Donoghue again. Just putting him out there. I mean, he was the head writer at multiple pivotal times. He is controversial. But I mean, he is one of the, he's the original head writer. He came back during a controversial period. He pioneered gonzo comedy with his time at the National Lampoon. So I think there is a viable argument for him to be in the Hall. So that I'm putting him out there again one last time. And if it doesn't get in this time, I'm like, I tried. I tried.
You've been stumping for a while, for sure. I think it certainly doesn't upset me to have a reminder, to have our audience get a reminder of who this person is if they didn't listen in the first season. Because you are right. I mean, he was a known commodity when he came on SNL, and a lot of them were not known commodities, but he was. And to a certain degree, from a writing perspective, elevated the pedigree of that room. I'm not necessarily a fan of the meanness, like the that piece, but I do think that if you're telling the story of SNL, it's tough to tell it without mentioning Michael O'Donoghue. Fellas, what do you guys think?
I think it's obviously a good pick to remind younger listeners what O'Donoghue contributed to the show, because the show was developed, partially with his style. I think that the reason he's been so on the brink of things is because he lacks longevity compared to the other writers that have been nominated previously. So he's so stuck in a specific era of the show, and you would have had to watch the 70s and early 80s to really see some of his sketches and understand who he was. His role in the first sketch ever on the show is good enough for me to put him into the Hall of Fame, but I understand that there are more prominent writers in the history of the show that I would vote above him. So I think it's good, Matt, that you put him there so at least we can stabilize his presence as a nominee, but I think it might be a while before he gets in.
Yeah, Matt, you made my job interesting to do an episode of Michael O'Donoghue, because I have no surprise, and a lot of SNL fans feel the same way. Jamie alluded to it. I have mixed feelings sometimes on Michael O'Donoghue, and so it'll be interesting for me to square that away with my approach with leading these discussions for these episodes. Is I tend to take more of a celebratory approach with these candidates and highlighting and celebrating their work on SNL. And I think I can still do that with Michael O'Donoghue while still highlighting some of, as Jamie said, the meanness and maybe some of that other stuff. But it'll be interesting to me. Matt, you challenged me in many ways by bringing Michael O'Donoghue, who I think is worthy of more discussion, definitely. So yeah, definitely an interesting pick, Matt.
Great. All right, Thomas. We'll go back to you.
All right, it's my pick, and I will choose the first musical guest for season 4. And I wanted to pick a musical guest who obviously has memorable performances, somebody who's really huge in not just SNL, but the cultural kind of zeitgeist at large, somebody whose career almost kind of aligns well with SNL, so somebody who was at the height of their popularity and performed on SNL at the same time. So I'm going with the 4-time musical guest. Lady Gaga is going to be an episode on season 4.
Wow, I think that's a great pick. I think she's, an absolute virtuoso, and she's had some great performances on the show for sure. She's tough to take your eyes off of when she's performing. Yeah, nice pick. This will be an interesting one to hear for sure. John or Matt, was Lady Gaga on either of your lists?
She was not. I do think she was a fun SNL host back in the day. I struggle with exactly how I would put somebody in the Hall of Fame as a musician over some other aspects of the show. And I don't know that Lady Gaga has all the stats to beat, the Dave Grohls of the world or other people who may be still on the ballot. But I am very curious to hear somebody make a case for Lady Gaga, who I do think not only on SNL, but in life has had some of the more eccentric, you can't take your eyes off her jaw-dropping performances in, my music watching career. So I'm excited to see what someone will say about Lady Gaga.
She wasn't on.
I will specify that we will talk about her hosting, her one hosting stint, but it is for musical guests. But we'll kind of cover the gamut. I'm not truth be told, I'm not a huge Lady Gaga fan. So it'll be fun for me I'm going to listen to her discography and do all of that. So it'd be fun for me to delve into Lady Gaga. But I rewatched some of her performances on SNL, and I was like, yeah, she puts on a show. And there's one in particular that kind of gave me chills that I think was a really, really strong performance.
She wasn't on my list, but that is an oversight on my part because I have loved every performance that she's done. She's kind of got a secondary connection back to SNL with the Muppet Christmas special that she did. That has become a standard in our household. Every year we watch that. If only for Pepe inappropriately getting a little too close and her like getting very shocked. Because she just rolls with the punches. But yeah, she meets my criteria for a musical guest because there's a lot of people on there who I'm just like, they're great musicians, but like she was willing to be in a sketch and take the piss out of herself. With that three-way sketch that she did, the Lonely Island sketch, with her and Justin Timberlake. I think she's an incredible musician. She elevates every performance that she's been on there. I think this is going to be a great conversation. And I can't wait to do trivia on Lady Gaga. I mean, that's going to be awesome.
Great. Okay. So we head to round 3 now. John, take it away.
So I have a lot of cast members left that I'm picking between, so I'd rather leave some of the cast members to Thomas and Matt let them fill it out, and then I could pick between the ones that are left. So I'm going to go to one of the criteria was writer or musical guest, and I think I'm going to lead in the direction of a writer who I think would be really interesting to talk about here. When the show was coming off one of the worst seasons in the history of the show, in my opinion, probably the worst season in the history of the show, season 20. Season 21 started up, and we had a writer named Adam McKay on the show. And he, created some great stuff. Obviously ended up working with Will Ferrell a lot, creating a ton of great movies, so much outside the SNL sphere in terms of comedy. And I'm excited to have somebody come on and talk about what specifically Adam McKay did on SNL during his time in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I think that he would be a great addition to this particular ballot.
Yeah, I do too. That's a nice pick. And I like the deferral as well, rolling out the cast members to Thomas and Matt. That's great. Thomas and Matt?
Yeah, there's a nice strategy there, John. I love it. John knows how to play the game. You have a lot of experience with these drafts that you guys do on the SNN. So I did have Adam McKay, not as for sure that I was going to pick him, but I had a list of writers that I thought would make good episodes, and Adam McKay is on that list. So I think I'm interested to delve into his SNL specific work as well. So this is a really nice one who was under consideration for me.
He wasn't on my list, but it was a matter of time. Next season he would have definitely been on my list. Because he's just an incredibly talented writer from a really pivotal time with some great sketches. So yeah, this is a terrific choice. Thank you.
All right, Matt, what are you going to do with that free pass that John just gave you? Let's hear who you've got.
I am going to put out Daryl Hammond.
Oh, great.
Yeah, he's got an incredible range. He can do the broad comedy. He can do grounded comedy. His Sean Connery impersonation was perfect, because Sean Connery probably never would have said those things, but he would have been thinking all of those things. And, his celebrity impersonations are spot on. Was the longest serving cast member until Keenan overtook him. And he continues to help, filling in as taking over for since Don Pardo's passing, doing the introductions every episode. So his dedication to SNL alone, even during his personal struggles, just really hammers home how much a big part of SNL history Daryl is, and why I think he should be in the Hall of Fame.
Excellent. Yeah, I think the man of 1,000 voices, Daryl Hammond. You can check out a great conversation that John had with him over at the SNN. Check that out for sure. You get inside his head a little bit, and it's an interesting combo, I think. So I think that we can have a nice conversation about Daryl Hammond on this show as well.
For sure. I think that, going into that conversation that I had with him this season was really interesting, because I wanted to approach it differently, since he's done so many interviews over the last 20 years, most of which were about his struggles while he was on the show. So I just really wanted to talk to him about, you're so method in the things that you've done on Saturday Night Live. How did you get to this point? Like what goes into it? And he views SNL like a sport. That's really what it is. So, I mean, there's no better candidate for the Hall of Fame if you have somebody who looks at it that way. And he was like, I'm the field goal kicker. Like, I come in for a specific reason to do a specific thing. And that's always the case when you're deciding about who you're going to vote for the Hall of Fame. Is like, do you vote for the cast member who excelled at a specific point of the show or the all-around great? And I think that's going to be a great debate when you get to those roundtables after season 4. But for me, this is a no-brainer. He has to be there because, like top 5 cast member in sketch appearances, just like leads the all-time record for Live from New York, just played so many presidents. Just for me, it's like you have to have him.
And I'm really happy because I ranked my cast members for this draft, and 3 of my top 4 have been taken. So Vanessa Bayer, Jason Sudeikis, and Daryl Hammond are off the board, and all 3 of those were in my top 4. So I think Daryl Hammond, for the reasons that all of you guys have said, is just a perfect podcast, perfect nominee, perfect episode fodder. It's going to be great. I recently, within the last few months, read his autobiography, which is really interesting. And he's just a wonderful, memorable cast member. So I love that pick.
Yeah, me too. Good job. All right, Thomas.
All righty. So one of the categories that we were choosing from was season 1 redo. So I'm going to use that. And I noticed on our list that we don't have any hosts yet. So I want to pick somebody who's probably going to make John happy. And I might have stolen his pick, but he took mine. So, we'll make each other happy there. So I am going to pick Justin Timberlake to do a season 1 redo on. And just thinking about it more and more, he had such a massive impact on the show and that era. His episodes were always must-see TV. Even non-SNL fans tuned in for Justin Timberlake episodes. And I just think that I think he's going to make for a great episode. And I, for one, am looking forward to talking about him. So Justin Timberlake, welcome to season 4.
I think on the other side of the coin is even people that weren't Justin Timberlake fans tuned in and watched it and enjoyed it. And I know that because I'm one of those people. Like, he won me over. He absolutely won me over with his song and dance, his willingness to, just jump in head first. And of course, just that trifecta of Lonely Island sketches. For that alone, he should almost be in because those are just so wonderful.
Yeah, that's part of it. He won me over as well. And I'll probably, I've said this before, but he pissed me off because it's like he was talented. He could dance, he could sing, he's good looking, he could act, and he's good on SNL too. Like, what is his deal? Like, he has no right to be such a good host on SNL. So
it's as if he can't do anything wrong.
I don't know. We'll see. I'll try to dig something
Except
out.
NFL stage shows.
Yes. Yeah. Thomas, you definitely took my pick. Absolutely was going to go there next because, it's a travesty that he hasn't been in there yet. This was event making television every time he hosted the show. And if you go back to the beginning from before he hosted, people were like, why? It was like a Justin Bieber situation. People were like, why is he going to host the show? He shouldn't be hosting the show. And then he did, and he created magic every time he was there. And really, if you go back and you think about the 3rd golden era of the show, he is the host that is most closely defined with that era. So I think that makes sense, and I think he needs to be reanalyzed for his time to potentially get in the future. So if you're still looking for somebody to talk about JT, I'm always down.
And I 100% agree. I mean, he kind of fills a niche when I think of hosts that, like, in the early seasons, like Steve Martin or Elliot Gould do, where they're almost considered like cast members. They were so frequent and so integrated so closely with the cast, and it's like the Barry Gibb talk show. Like, he's just is perfect. Like, if you had to take a host and make them a cast member, I don't know if it's the Mickey Mouse Club experience that he brings to the table, but I think he would have slid in perfectly as a cast member. He's got the comedic chops. and he's just got charisma, and it's like,
Absolutely.
yeah, I cannot wait for this. And I get to do trivia on him too, so bonus.
Great. All right. So this brings us back around the loop. We'll do a quick recap. We've got Anna Gasteyer, Sarah Schneider, and her partner, Chris Kelly. This time I'll write it down. Vanessa Bayer, Jason Sudeikis, Michael O'Donoghue, Lady Gaga, Adam McKay, Daryl Hammond, Justin Timberlake. This sounds like a great season so far, folks, and we've still got 6 more picks. So, John, take it away.
Yeah, so I'm also going to go back to season 1 here and pick somebody who I think really needs to be talked about again, because there's actually, there's a name on this ballot that I think was just like forgotten about and was put in the wrong time. And that's why, they haven't been voted in, because if this person did what they did over the last 15 years instead of the previous, eras, there's no doubt they would have been gotten on the first time. And that's John Goodman. I mean, just having that record for so many seasons in a row hosting and just being so much like ingrained in the show, basically, like, and also like doing all that Blues Brothers stuff, like becoming, partners with Dan Aykroyd on screen. Like, there's just so many things that I find so fascinating. That Linda Tripp part that he did. He also comes back into more recent seasons and plays like I forget who it is, but plays somebody in the Trump presidency. Like, he's been a friend of the show for a very long time and such a significant part of the show. To me, he's in the pantheon of that like upper echelon room of hosts. So I think that it's surprising to me that he wouldn't have been voted in so far. And I think that somebody else needs to make the case for him again.
Yeah, I agree. It makes me feel old, to be honest with you, because it makes me seem like the 90s were a really long time ago for people to be forgetting about John Goodman. But the 90s were not that long ago, folks. John Goodman was a fixture on this show for 9 consecutive years. That's John, help me out here. That's unprecedented, right? Nobody.
I think it was 11 consecutive years.
Was it 11?
Pretty sure.
Wow. Nobody else has done that.
No.
Like
I mean,
consecutive.
like when Mulaney did like 5 years in a row, we were like, this is crazy. Like,
yeah,
double it.
Yeah. Matt or Thomas, did John Goodman appear on either of your lists?
Did not. But again, great pick for all of the reasons listed. I can't wait to hear that episode.
For my season 1 redo, if I didn't pick Justin Timberlake, I was going to pick John Goodman. So I think maybe John and I just kind of swapped picks. If John had picked Timberlake, then I'd have picked John Goodman for mine. So I think that's a really good call. And I think you're right, Jamie. I think the lineup for season 4 of the SNL Hall of Fame already is looking pretty solid. And come on, people, John Goodman, let's go.
All right, Matt, pick number 4.
All right, this is another cast member. One of those all-around utility players that I really respect. It is Chris Parnell. He could be anything. Like, he could play something very grounded, like a teacher or a principal, in a school sketch or a game show host. But then he could go like to extremes, like Merv the Perv, Sean DeMarco, and he's possibly the most viral sketch of SNL history. He is in the Chronicles of Narnia sketch, the Lazy Sunday. Which really broke Lonely Island. Like that was their first sketch on the internet that just sort of blew up. And he continues to work in SNL adjacent projects like 30 Rock or Dr. Spaceman or Speckman. And he does a bunch of animated stuff. So he's just a great, amazing, talented person who continues to work hard. And I think he'd be a great addition.
I love him. I love him as the pitchman type character. I think of that great sketch with Steve Martin and I want to say it's Amy Poehler, where it's the financial literacy leaflet. It's basically like, don't spend money you don't have. It's only 1 page. It's right there. This is my secret. I think that's great. His delivery is wonderful, and yeah, I big fan. big fan for sure.
You know, as part of my behind the scenes podcast work, I keep a list of people who I would like to do an episode on at some point. It's like an episode worthy kind of list. And Chris Parnell is definitely on that. At some point, I told myself I would love to do an episode on Chris Parnell. I mean, just, he can play oddball. He could play the straight man. He's so versatile. And he's another one of those performers. He almost reminds me of, honestly, of like Vanessa Bayer, who he might have gotten overshadowed by a lot of other people in his cast, but he was so consistent and so solid. And I think there's a lot of meat on that bone. I think it's going to be a good episode.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be great. I mean, I love Parnell. I think he's probably one of my favorite cast members. Whenever he was on the show, I was like enjoying everything he brought to it. He is an interesting case, though. This is a cast member who got fired and was brought back. Yeah. So his career isn't so squeaky clean, and I believe he was let go a second time when they through budget cuts. Like, I don't know if he was planning on leaving the show when he left it at the time that he left it. So that's an interesting thing as well. So it's not like it's not like he has straight A's across the board as far as his career is concerned. But saying all of that, there were points where when they knew how to use him and use him well, he actually dominated on the show in particular points. Like, I think there was one season where I think he co-led the season in sketch appearances with Will Ferrell, which is, it's not easy to do. So, like, you would think of him and go back to that era and you think he's probably like the third, fourth, or fifth, sixth cast member off the board if you're naming your top ones. But there was times where he was the 1, 2, or 3. And I think if you're going to get to that point, you definitely have a case nowadays. So I'm interested to hear whoever is going to make the case for Parnell, why he should get in.
Great. Yeah. All right, Thomas, pick number 4.
All right, I'm looking at the list. We're a little light on hosts. We have John Goodman and Justin Timberlake. I want to throw another host in there. 5-timer. Believe first hosted in 2000 and most recently was maybe in 2017 or so. It's Dwayne Johnson. I think he's always, he's just very compelling, captivating person to watch. Like, I'm one of those people, I'll go see any movie. My wife and I both will go see any movie that Dwayne Johnson's in because he just pops on screen. I've been a fan of his since he was in the WWF. And I think he's been a good host. I think he's been a really good host. And some memorable sketches. There's one infamous one in particular that I'm definitely gonna talk about. The White Castle robot sketch, the mad scientist convention sketch that I think's an interesting. The one that I personally think is a really good sketch, but I think it's an interesting discussion to be had. So I think Dwayne Johnson, a wonderful host, in my opinion. Don't know if he's ever going to come back. He may or may not. But as it stands now, he's a 5-timer, and I think definitely worthy of discussion.
Absolutely. Yeah, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I'm a giant wrestling fan as well. Followed his career, and it was, real fun to see him when he was still wrestling, host the show. It almost seemed like an acknowledgement that this weird world existed, and then he absolutely exploded from it, and took a rocket to the moon, and never looked back. And the fact that he's come back 4 more times after that's just wonderful. So yeah, that'll be a great episode. Well, I'm looking forward to that conversation. John or Matt, any comments on The Rock?
I think he's great every time he hosts the show. Just like brings this energy out that you don't get from a lot of other hosts. And I think we are naturally filling in most, if not all, the 5-timers onto the ballot at some point. And it'll be great to see, once the backlog of great hosts finally do get in, who is that next group that people are most interested in putting in. Because I wouldn't say that even though The Rock or Dwayne Johnson now is a 5-timer, I wouldn't necessarily put him in the all-time great host list. But once those greats finally do get in, then I'm going to start to consider him. So I would love to hear the case for Dwayne Johnson.
I mean, it's going to be a really interesting one. Like, honestly, SNL is what changed my opinion of him. I'm not a big wrestling fan. So I was like, he's a wrestler. What is he going to do? I mean, even though he did live in Canada and stuff, blah. But then I saw him hosting and I'm like, holy crap, good. And that completely changed my opinion of him. I went out to see every movie he was doing, like the Jumanji stuff. I'm like, this is hilarious. And I enjoyed it. I genuinely enjoy him on the screen. I actually got to be about 15 feet away from him at a event for Black Adam, not his best outing. But that dude is just natural charisma distilled into a human form. Like just being in the room with him, he just exudes this positive, fun energy. And this is going to be a really fun one.
Matt, what you discovered when you saw him first host SNL is what wrestling fans knew about him for years. Is that like 90+% of wrestling is how good the person is on the mic. Well, maybe less than that, but that's like at least half the battle is how good you are on the mic. And from my perspective, it's a little debate, but Dwayne Johnson might very well be the best ever on the mic in professional wrestling, and that translated to SNL and on screen.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What I think is really interesting about Dwayne Johnson is, like, you know, in season 1, you guys had Taylor Swift on the ballot, and obviously, like, Taylor Swift had some amazing performances on Saturday Night Live, but really better known naturally for being like one of the greatest musicians of this generation, and people are just obsessed with her. And I think this is a somewhat comparable case here, where you have Dwayne Johnson, who is just so fascinating outside of the show, probably the number one, you know, grossing movie star right now. You know, Dwayne Johnson movie, everyone's going to it. Amazing career in the WWE, but on SNL, do people recognize him for the work that he's put in there? And that's what I think is interesting.
Yeah, it'll definitely need to be a focused conversation, and I think with that in mind, it'll be a good one. All right, around the horn once again. We're back to John with your last pick.
Yeah, so there are still a few cast members left on the board to pick between, and I am debating between two people. One is somebody who I think analytically probably has the best case to make the show, and one who I think is probably the more interesting episode. So I think I'm going to go for the more interesting episode in this case, because we're going to have many seasons to come for these people, and perhaps Thomas or Matt will pick them. But I'm going to go with one of my favorite cast members to watch when I fell in love with the show, and he has longevity, and that is a huge case for the reason why he could potentially get there. He had the second most sketch appearances when he retired at his time on the show, right behind Phil. And I'm going to go with Fred Armisen, because I think Fred has characters, impressions. He comes onto the show, and he's really he's hustling to get his stuff onto the show. It's a unique brand of humor, and then he fits in so interestingly with the this era that people fell in love with. So I'm curious to listen to the Fred Armisen case. That's the one where I see it pop up on my podcast feed. I'm like, oh, okay, I really want to hear what people have to say about him. And to me, still the greatest episode hosted by an SNL alumni is the Fred Armisen hosted episode.
I will have to go back and rewatch that. Fred Armisen, a big fan. Loved Portlandia. Loved his work on SNL. You're right. It is a unique brand. There is this vocal affectation that he can do that just kills me every time. I don't know how he does it. He's just a great performer, and it's going to be a good conversation for sure. Matt, what did you think of Armisen?
On my list, you beat me to it. He's just an amazing, hilarious guy. He's got, coming from the background that he did in music, as a drummer, as a punk, to land in comedy, it's both a natural and unnatural fit. So, which I think is where some of the absurdity comes in his voice, the comedic voice that he has. And I love all of his work. His goodbye sketch, the wedding band reunion, just beautiful. So yeah, I cannot wait. It's gonna be amazing.
Yeah, Fred Armisen was number 5 on my list. So 4 out of my top 5 are taken, and there's definitely a lot of sketches and characters to bring up with Fred. I know he's a fan favorite. I think he'll be one of the headliners of this season. I imagine this will be one of the episodes that people are most looking forward to. So I think that's a wonderful pick, John.
Great. Okay, well, let's move to Matt's last pick.
All right, my last pick is a musical pick, 4-time musical guest, 3 times as himself, once in his side project Tin Machine, and it's David Bowie. Like Lady Gaga, every appearance was iconic. I mean, he was a true New Yorker in that he immigrated to New York and became a regular fixture in the city, so he's a part of the city's culture. But he draw from the city with his early time at the factory and in Warhol. Then in his 1979 appearance in particular, where he used Klaus Nomi, an opera singer from CBGB's, and Joey Arias, a iconic performance artist and drag performer. So he was pulling in culture from New York that is part of the counterculture, like, stuff that people didn't see if you're like living in the Midwest or even living in California. Like, this is part of the American zeitgeist bubbling up that would then change. And he had these like over the top performances where one of the performances, he couldn't even move. They had to carry him out because his outfit was just totally immobile, but he owned that stage. Labyrinth changed my life, so I have a soft spot for him there. But so David Bowie, I can't wait to get to that episode.
Yeah, I'm going to have to. David Bowie is somebody else I'm going to have to brush up on. I know David Bowie and I know his work, but not from an SNL perspective. So that one where you're saying they're carrying him out, I'm very curious to check that out. We know that musical guests are the kiss of death in the SNL Hall of Fame. They just don't seem to make it any higher than 15% of the vote. I don't know why that is, and I don't know if Bowie will Bowie's episode will buoy him above that. I'm not sure, but I think it's a great pick. I think that'll be an interesting conversation, especially in light of everything you just outlined.
When I go back to thinking about Bowie on SNL, I think a lot about the 25th anniversary of the show, which was this at the time, like the biggest celebration in the history of the show. And then they're promoting what's coming up next, which is season 25, episode 1. Jerry Seinfeld and David Bowie, and he's going to come on and he's going to do Rebel Rebel on the show, and that's like a really big moment to kick off this next generation of Saturday Night Live. So I think he has some really iconic performances in the history of the show, so let's dance.
All right, yes. David Bowie, definitely a friend of the show. You had mentioned, Matt, he was on in 1979, which I think late 70s, 79 in particular, might be the peak of David Bowie's powers, just as a cultural icon, for many reasons. And I think SNL got him there at the right time. I'm excited because it's been years since I've had an excuse to listen to David Bowie's vast discography. So I just might do that, honestly. I might kind of go through his discography, looking forward to revisiting his SNL performances. And as a Bowie guy myself, I like this, man. Good job.
All right, we'll keep this wagon wheel rolling here with you, Thomas, and you're going to wrap this up in a bow for us. What have you got?
All right, so I obviously have a lot of options. Yeah. I was looking at cast members, but I think we're actually good on cast members. I think we've got a good, solid lineup of cast members. There's at least a couple that I can see as like season 5 headliners that I might like want to save, and I'll definitely pick them for season 5. We're good on writers. I want to go with another host, actually, and there are, looking at my list here, there's 4 that I have in consideration, that I have in bold after Dwayne Johnson. I'm going to go with somebody actually who, when I was in high school, probably hosted the episode that was probably the most anticipated episode that I can ever remember. Is this person auditioned for the show and didn't get it, and was on a competitor's show in the 90s and gained really big fame on another sketch show. I can see people's minds. I know John probably knows who it is, and Matt, I can see your brains working. So this person was already known as one of the most popular sketch performers in the world, having never been on SNL. I'm talking about Jim Carrey. I want to talk about 3-time host Jim Carrey. He hosted his first appearance in the late 90s, ended up being a wonderful episode, but leading up to that episode, I can't remember people being so hyped for an SNL episode. I can't remember so much anticipation, and you kind of had to be there in a lot of ways in the moment to remember how hyped that episode was, and I think it lived up to the hype. I remember that it was an electric episode. That's just, I can't remember even since an episode that was so hyped and lived up to it and just caused like talk the next week. It was just like an electric night. So Jim Carrey, welcome to season 4. I'm looking forward to doing an episode on you.
Yeah, that's a great pick. He was a great host and just a bona fide superstar, absolute superstar. There was a time where if you put him in a comedy, it was going to gross, $100 million or whatever the equivalent was at the time, $75 million or whatever. And he just kept going with it. He really nice pick. Like it.
So here's the question with Jim Carrey, though. How much does his brief stint playing Biden have an effect on voters, right? Because, we open up 46 and all the news is, okay, Carrey's going to play Biden. And then he basically disappears without a trace after that. Yeah. No explanation for why he stopped. And then obviously we get, some weird transition point into Alex Moffat and eventually J.A.J. But yeah, it's a factor here. And I know we're nominating and looking at his 3 hosting appearances, but based on, a lot of the audience that watches the show now, I really hope that they listen to the episode to hear some of the great moments he had prior to that, because it is a factor that could cloud judgment.
Yeah, I think we saw an example of it in a previous season on a larger scale with Alec Baldwin. I think a lot of voters, we saw in the roundtables when people were discussing Alec Baldwin, that him playing Trump negatively affected how some voters looked at Alec Baldwin as an SNL host. And I kind of had to remind people that as a host, Alec Baldwin only played Trump once. And we were kind of looking at Alec Baldwin from a host perspective. And I know, we talk about everything basically, like with Lady Gaga. I'm going to be talking a little bit about her hosting stint too. But I agree with you, John. I'm interested to see how much voters look at Jim Carrey playing Joe Biden. But I hope, we will touch on that probably at the end of the episode. But I hope that we can do a good enough job of delving into not just that first, just super electric episode that he hosted, but he has 2 other ones after that. And he's just an amazing sketch performer, as we saw in Living Color prior to his first SNL hosting stint. So I'm looking forward to presenting a case for Jim Carrey while also, mentioning that he played Biden. But I think it will influence some voters, but to what degree, I don't know. Alec Baldwin made the SNL Hall of Fame, even though he has the Trump stain on his resume. So I wonder, and people didn't look at Carrey's Biden negatively to the degree that they looked at Alec Baldwin's Trump. But I think it will play a part. It will be a component in people when they're trying to decide if they want to vote for Jim Carrey or not.
Yeah, I agree.
I think he made a smart move in bailing on the bit when he did, before it became an annoyance. I mean, his love for the show, wanting to be a cast member, then coming back and doing a film about a former regular performer like Andy Kaufman, Man on the Moon, where he recreated the Mighty Mouse sketch. I think it's going to be a really interesting. He's an interesting human all around, and hearing a discussion about his time hosting will be really great. And I'm certainly going to have meat to work with on the trivia there. So that's going to be an easy one.
Yeah, I think that an entire episode could be devoted to his first hosting gig. Like, that's how important it was, in my opinion, in SNL history. So I think just John mentioned, like with Michael O'Donoghue, by the mere fact that he was in the very first sketch of all time, we should talk about him. I think by the mere fact that Jim Carrey hosted the most hyped episode, arguably in SNL history, I think that's worthy of discussion. So I'm pretty excited about this.
Yeah, this is going to be exciting. Season 4 is going to be exciting. This is great news. I'm really happy with who we picked here. We'll recap one more time. We've got Anna Gasteyer, Sarah Schneider and Chris Kelly, Vanessa Bayer, Jason Sudeikis, Michael O'Donoghue, Lady Gaga, Adam McKay, Daryl Hammond, Justin Timberlake, John Goodman, Chris Parnell, Dwayne Johnson, Fred Armisen, David Bowie, and Jim Carrey. If that isn't a hell of a show there, I don't know what is. This is going to be a great deal of fun. But wait, there's more. Because this season, season 4, we are introducing a new category, a new award. And it is the Don Pardo Memorial Award. And the first recipient of the Don Pardo Memorial Award will be Don Pardo. So I look forward to a conversation that Thomas can put together about the great Don Pardo and establishing a new award that isn't necessarily voted on, but selected by a committee, or in this case, just me. Yeah.
Is this only for announcers in the history of the show, like Mel Brandt and Bill Hanrahan?
No, that would be incredibly boring. But we can use it for whatever we want. But in this case, you can't tell the story without him. You just can't. And there's not a category that he fits in neatly. Not to say that we couldn't just interject him, but I think that he is somebody that is worthy of having an award named after. So. I look forward to hearing that episode as well.
Yeah, Jamie, we've discussed behind the scenes about what we do with people like Don Pardo, who have had such a huge impact on SNL. So I think I co-sign this. I think this is a great idea, and I am looking forward to digging into Don Pardo's life and career and putting together a show for everybody.
Great. Well, that brings us to the end of our Season 4 candidate draft. I really want to thank you gentlemen for joining me today. This has been a lot of fun. And let's move forward into Season 4. Where can we find more of your work, John?
The hope is that the writer's strike has come to a little bit of a conclusion, positive one for the writers and everybody else who's looking to be paid fairly. And if that is the case, that would mean that Saturday Night Live would be returning soon for its 49th season. And I am, as always, so excited to get to cover modern day episodes. So you can find the Saturday Night Network on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, where we will cover the show right after it airs with our Hot Take Show, our Roundtable weekly on Monday nights, where we go through everything and compare the episode to the history of the show, talk about why it's important. We have our analytics crew get together for By the Numbers, and that'll all be back for season 49, among many other types of shows like SNL Stories, as we talked about today. So happy to always get to talk about Saturday Night Live and do it in conjunction with all of these guys who do amazing work here at the SNL Hall of Fame. Really parallel work here as they're covering the history of the show. We get to talk about the stuff that's happening in modern days. And I love getting to do this with all of you. So thank you for including me today.
We love having you, John. So thank you so much. Matt?
You can find me on Instagram, Matt or Dill. I am producing a podcast called Order Up. Myself, Mary Kennedy, Carrie Haim, and Kelly Zimnikis, where we talk to celebrities and comedians. And yeah, we had Gelman from Regis and Kelly. So yeah, we have some interesting guests, and we get to talk about cereal and hamburgers, and we're just wrapping up pancakes v waffles. So some interesting stuff. Check it out. Yeah, and I have a comic book podcast called Detecting the Marvelous, where myself, Lainey LaRose, and Dan Rosen talk about comic book runs over the years, like the X-Men from 1991, the first 4 Fantastic Fours, Court of Owls from Batman. So we've got that coming out, and join us for that as well.
Great. Thomas, where can we find more of your work?
Yes, you can find me watching Jason Sudeikis and Vanessa Bayer sketches and listening to David Bowie and Lady Gaga. And as I prep for for this wonderful season 4. I'm on Twitter mostly as far as social media goes, at Thomas A. Senna. I love talking SNL. I love talking sports. So you can follow me on there, send me a message, say hello, and yeah, just keep supporting us here at the SNL Hall of Fame. Listen to season 4. I'm excited.
Great. Well, for the 3 guests and myself, we bid you adieu. Thanks for coming out. All right. Thank you so much, Thomas, Matt, John. You did a hell of a job, and I'm impressed at the roster that we put together for season 4. Now, some of you may be scratching your head and saying, well, where did they come up with the list of guests they could choose from? Visit snlhof.com, and you can check out the criteria by which anybody is added to the list of folks that they can nominate in the Hall of Fame. And that was what they chose from, other than the parameters that they were given. Things change. I can tell you that. Sarah Schneider and Chris Kelly are out. They have been replaced with Rosie Schuster for season 4. So Rosie Schuster will be nominated in their place in season 4. And John Goodman made the SNL Hall of Fame in season 3. So he will not be eligible for season 4. So he is out, and he will be replaced with a Don Pardo episode. So we hope you enjoyed what we put together for you today. Next week, we'll be back to the long-form conversations with SNL icons and SNL superfans colliding to share some great stories about the nominees. And then it's up to you to vote your little asses off and create us a class of season 4. I look forward to you doing that. And I look forward to you coming out every week. Now, if you could do me a favor, and on the way out, please, as you pass the Weekend Update exhibit, turn out the lights, because the SNL Hall of Fame is now closed.
Thanks for listening to the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. Make sure to rate, review, share, and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media at SNL HOF. This is Doug Denant saying, see you next week.
To podcasts and such.